This episode is brought to you by the V1 Project. Before we dive into today's episode of the LiftAffect podcast, I want to tell you about something that's really quite special to me. It's called the V1 Project, and it's all about bringing professional pilots together to create a supportive community. You know, being a pilot is more than just a job. It's a way of life. The V1 Project is here to help you cultivate a core set of values and virtues that will help you enhance not just your career, but all aspects of your life. Many of you have reached out and asked about the LiftAffect Mental Skills course for value-based living. While we're not offering that course right now as a standalone course, we have included it as the first 4 months of the V1 Project. So if you want to take that course, you got to go into the V1 Project to get it. But here's the thing. The V1 Project is not just about what you learn, it's about who you meet. It's all about building a strong sense of community. Picture yourself surrounded by like-minded individuals, all on a journey to better themselves and to support each other. Our motto says it all. V1 is a place for professional pilots to build community, cultivate and develop and express a core set of values and virtues for optimal living in a supportive community with encouragement and professional guidance. So if you're a professional pilot looking for something more, something that'll take your career and your life to the next level, head on over to the v1project.com. That's www.thev1 as in the number 1, not O-N-E, but 1, project.com. Join the V1 Project today, and let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a sneak peek of a premium episode of the LiftAffect podcast. I'm your host, Matt McNeil, Clinical Director and Director of Human Performance at LiftAffect. Our premium channel was created in order to provide support to the standard LiftAffect podcast, which comes out every Friday and is available at no cost to everyone on all standard podcast feeds, including YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Podbean, and elsewhere. If you'd like to subscribe to the premium channel of the LiftAffect podcast, please click on the link provided in the description section of this episode in your feed, or head over to liftaffect.supercast.com. That's LiftAffect.supercast.com. It's $10 a month to subscribe. For those of you that are already subscribers to the premium channel, please go to liftaffect.supercast.com and download the subscription feed. For those of you that are not subscribers of the LiftAffect premium feed, you can still hear the first 20 minutes of today's episode and determine whether or not becoming a premium subscriber is for you. At the end of this short episode, I'll explain how you can access the premium episodes in full, along with a host of other premium membership benefits we've created. So without further delay, here's today's sneak peek of the premium episode of the LiftAffect podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the LiftAffect podcast. I am your host, Matt McNeil, founder, clinical director, and director of human performance at LiftAffect, where we assist professional pilots with maintaining better mental health and optimizing their mental skills. The goal of this podcast is simple: to help pilots and other high-liability professionals and disciplines come out of the shadows to discover how we can live better lives personally and professionally. Join us each episode as we discuss various topics ranging from mental health, mental skills and performance, to business, entrepreneurship, and a few other surprises along the way.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first edition of the 2024 LiftAffect podcast, where your host, Carl Keller, and the newly revived man of the moment.
Newly revived. So that's the truth.
Matt McNeil. Dude, I hear you had a little bit of
recovering. Not from
man.
intoxication. Don't think that. No, from like everyone was sick around me, and yeah. But I fought it. I fought the good fight. I'm on my backside, on the front side, backside of it. So we're good, man. We're good. I'm feeling better.
You know, with most people, I would ask, what's your New Year's resolution? However, I know where you stand with that. So we're not even going to go there. Yeah. I brought it up. See, I got it in there, but I know that that's not a thing. No. So we're going to leave that alone.
I have goals, okay, but there's a difference from resolutions. But yeah, we don't have to get into that one today. Nobody wants to hear about my goals. I want to hear about your goals. listener. That's what I want to hear about.
No, yeah,
and I want to hear about Carl's goals.
Well,
although I know you're not going to tell me on the air. So,
nope.
Okay.
But you know what? I thought would be kind of neat to do something that I don't know that we're
going to start pulling questions from the subscribers, and we'll answer them in full. You'll get part of this. If you're not a subscriber, you'll get part of this episode. And then if you are a subscriber, you'll get the whole one. So you got some questions, man. What do we got?
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
The first question is dealing with what I think all of us are going to deal with in some way, form, or fashion this year. And that is what's going on, at least in the United States, the political atmosphere. And the question really was, how do I deal with it, with all the stuff going on? And especially when it's someone that I don't agree with or doesn't agree with me, whether it be in the cockpit or with the within their own family.
Yep.
How are you going to? That's a great question, because I mean, we've become so polarized.
Yeah.
That some people don't really want to hear what you have to say. They want you to regurgitate or just to buy lock, stock, and barrel what they think.
Right.
So how do you have that kind of conversation where you can still maintain a good working environment or a good family relationship? Because I mean, we've all heard of families that are getting torn apart over this issue, and it's just going to ratchet as we get closer and closer. How do you deal with that?
Well, good question. I would say the smartest of the smart of us don't engage in those conversations. If you know that the person you're sitting with is polarized to one position, and you may, feel the same way, you may feel the opposite, but that's like sticking your hand in a dog's mouth and not expecting to be bit. So I would say if you avoid those conversations as much as possible. Obviously, you don't want to create awkwardness. I understand that. You're not going to be like, I'm not talking about that. That could create a rupture in CRM, for example, at work or whatever. But I always think there's got to be other stuff to talk about, and maybe try to veer the conversation elsewhere. That's the smartest thing to do. You're not going to change anybody's opinion. And it just like, is anybody going to change yours? Occasionally, some of us will be like, yeah, I'm willing to have my opinion changed. But I think that's like the 1%. Most people do not have any interest in changing their opinion, especially when it's a loaded conversation that's activating. But let's say you must engage. You cannot, you have to get into it. There's a few things. So really what we're talking about is, how do you manage political stress?
Or conversations.
But I would even just say, like, it starts with even, like, how do you manage your own stress around it? Because if you're stressed out, that's going to eke out in your conversation. So I would go back to the root and be like, well, what's going on with you? Forget the person sitting next to you. Why are you getting so stressed about this? And I understand there's injustices in the world and there's real things going on. I'm not telling you to, bury your head in the sand about politics. I choose just to not. I get my political news in about 30 seconds from trusted sources of really individuals that are different opinions. I ask them, hey, what's going on in the world? They can tell me in 15 seconds. That's all I really need to know. I choose to invest my time elsewhere. That's just me. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I would say one is limit news consumption. So set specific times for checking news and checking social media. If it's a constant ticker feed, stock ticker, you're just you're like just flooding yourself. You're waterboarding yourself with news. So choose reliable sources to avoid sensationalism and misinformation. Now that's a whole nother debate. Don't Fox News, or I love Fox News, or One America, or MSNBC, or blah, 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 blah. I can't even guide you in that. Like, learn. We've tried to do some work here on teaching people how to like think more scientifically and looking at studies. We'll keep trying to work at that. But I mean, you need to choose reliable sources. And I would say if it's sensational, if it's this like the world is on fire, everything is ending, I probably would avoid it. Because that's sensationalism, and that is often riddled with misinformation. Consider using, in terms of limiting yourself, using apps or browser extensions that limit your time on news websites. You can actually do these. So you want to, and I would say, really, you could probably get the news that you need in 15 minutes, not 15 hours, like just the constant barrage. It's always in the background. Secondly, is stay informed and engage, right? Focus on quality over quantity when consuming news. Take breaks from the news cycle, but, stay informed about key issues that are important to you, and try to engage in constructive discussions, but be mindful of your emotional well-being. If you find yourself getting really agitated and really upset, you might want to not keep gnawing on that bone, if you will. Establish boundaries. We talked about boundaries in the past. You need to recognize political discussions are becoming too stressful. When they're becoming too stressful, you need to recognize when this is becoming too stressful, and then set a boundary. Boundaries are about, and they're personal boundaries, not what somebody else is doing, what you do, what you choose to subject yourself to. So set boundaries. Choose when and where to engage in political conversations so that you can maintain a balance. Is it a good idea to talk about politics in the flight deck?
You already know the answer to that. There are certain ones that are very triggering. Political is one. Religious is another. Mm-hmm. That's there are certain things that people can get, can you really get themselves wound up in a tizzy over things, either because you're in violent agreement or you're in violent disagreement.
Right.
So yeah, those are things that after a while you kind of know, you can kind of tell where the conversation goes just by the first question.
Right. That's right.
And some people can have a conversation about things. Others, you just can't
do it. I think I agree. Religion and politics have never mixed well on the flight deck. And even if people agree with you, I think it's still as a practice to avoid it. You need to just avoid those conversations. That's my recommendation. It never leads to good things, but that's your choice. You need to practice mindfulness in how to relax. Incorporate things like and we talk about meditation and even just like breathing, like learning to breathe properly to manage stress. So when you're watching the news and you're getting really upset, or your uncle, Tommy is going off because he's had too much to drink and he's getting on you because you're too much of this or that. You can't, you can't really choose your family. I mean, yeah, you can, but sometimes you got to tolerate them. And it's best to, instead of like throwing fists, maybe to keep the peace, just learn to self-soothe yourself. Learn how to breathe. So engage, and I would say overall, try to like engage in activities that actually bring you joy and relaxation, as opposed to stress and agitation.
I don't know if too many people seem to think that politics seems to bring them
does joy. Does it really bring you joy? I mean, maybe if you're a politician,
I'm euphoric over it.
Right. But I mean, does this like contribute to your life? Is this really good for you? So something to think about. Now, here's a big one. It seems so simple, but it's not. Focus on what you can control. So think about this. If you think about what are the aspects of politics that you can influence, engage in that, right? I would say, and I think politics is so funny to me. Like everybody gets so like bent over the axle about national politics. Actually, local politics are more important to you.
That's
where
was
you
what
live.
I was going to say.
It's
that's what I was going to say. It's those affect you day to day, much more so.
They affect everything.
I mean, whether it's the town council, the school board,
right.
Everything. Those are the things that, like you say, your vote is proportionately more important because it's a smaller demographic base you're pulling from.
Yes,
population wise.
Yeah. So I ask myself, do I have any say in I make my vote. Okay. How long does it take to make a vote? 2 seconds. You vote. they're done. Check the box. There, you did your part. And you should vote. The problem with this country is people don't vote. You should vote. Your vote does actually count. But like beyond that, like you screaming at the television and screaming at people around you that think differently, like, does that actually change the outcome or change anything at all? I would argue it probably doesn't. It probably doesn't. And I am a firm believer that focusing on things that you can control is a much better activity for your physical and mental health and your well-being than focusing on things that you cannot control. That's like getting upset about the weather. And we all do that a little bit. I understand. But if you really think about it, like getting pissed because it's raining out, think about how stupid that is. That's just the dumbest damn thing in the world. So really asking yourself, can I control this? If you cannot control it, let it go.
Yep.
Just let it go.
One of the things that I would say, and I'm talking specifically in the cockpit now, it's a work environment, and it's also someone that most of the time, there's occasionally where it's somebody you know really well, but most of the time it's people that you will fly with very sporadically. And one of the things that I've found that works really well is redirecting them. And I'll give an example in the political realm. You can, if someone is just bound and determined to talk about it, redirect them towards going, talk about something that they probably don't have any stake in. And as example, like you say, bring it local and just say, I was my town board, they're the zoning thing, and they're bringing all these things in here that affect you, but most likely do not affect the other person.
Right.
So it's harder for them to have a say because they're not probably not living in the same town you are. So it's diverting them and redirecting them if they're bound and determined to do it, short of just having this wall of silence, which creates its own issues because you're perceived as being stubborn or obstinate. Right. It gets harder the closer to home you come, whether it's a neighbor or a family member, from an uncle to a child or a spouse. That's a harder one to do because what you're talking about does affect them.
Right.
And it's also harder to just, set those personal boundaries because that conversation can lead to some challenging outcomes. It needs to be done for your own sanity, because no one's going to look out for your well-being more than you.
Yeah.
And at some point you have to decide how far are you willing to let it go? Because at some point it's going to, whether you want it to or not, if you don't set those boundaries or be able to come to a peace with it, it's going to start affecting that relationship.
Yeah. And you really, you have to maintain perspective. Remember that political situations are complex and they can change. And so, keep in mind that the media tends to focus on sensational stories, and not every event is as dire as they portray it to be. It's not to say things don't matter and things aren't important, but they act like the world is going to end, like, with every single story. And I don't care whether you're watching the left or the right or whatever. I can't even stand watching it. It's just so it's so histrionic. So you've got to maintain some perspective. Secondly, or fifthly, or seventhly, whatever, I've given you a bunch of stuff. Maybe connect with others, right? Share your thoughts and concerns with very even-keeled people, or get a therapist. You can actually work on this in therapy if it's really distressing to you. There are support groups or communities where you can discuss political issues in a constructive and supportive environment. Because I'll tell you, outside of a very structured, supportive, set up infrastructure, political conversations are nothing but destructive today.
It's a free fire zone. It's a wild, wild west.
It is eroded our society.
We cannot, too often it seems like we cannot have a conversation, an adult conversation where we can agree to disagree.
Listen,
and still be able to discuss things civilly.
A new study came out since 2016. 1 in 7 people have a direct, close family member that they no longer speak to because of politics. 1 in 7. And before that, it was like 1 in 18 or something. I mean,
I'd be afraid to see what it says about now. I'm afraid that number is higher.
It's totally polarizing.
It is.
Now, we know how I feel about social media. I think it's a great tool when you use it as a tool. But if you are not very intentional with using it as a tool, you actually become the tool to sell things to. That's what it's designed for, especially if it's free. If you're not paying for it, you are being used to buy things. That's how it works. So
yes,
take breaks from social media. It will amplify stress and it's going to polarize. So take breaks from platforms. Here's a pro tip. Get it off your phone. Just use it on the computer. Checking Facebook on the computer is a utterly lame experience than on your phone because it's not designed for you to be sitting at a computer station checking it on a web browser. It's designed for a constant ticker of scrolling that you're using while you're sitting on the toilet. That's what it's designed for.
And the only time I look at Facebook is on the desktop.
Yeah, it's the only time you should look at it. It's otherwise
it's the only time I look at it.
And look, there's some social media does some pretty amazing things. It's allowed greater connectivity. It's allowed. I mean, there's some good upside to it, but that's when you're being really specific with how you use it. But most people are not, and so they're just like literally cattle being, or sheep just being herded around by organizational psychologists and advertisers. I mean, and I'm not trying to be all conspiracy. I'm just telling you very matter-of-factly how these things are designed and how they work. It's well documented. There's lots
You are the product.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely how it works. So take breaks. I'm just not saying get rid of it, but please take some breaks and get it off your phone. Develop some coping strategies. Identify healthy coping strategies that work for you, like exercising or journaling or creative outlets when it comes to political stress that you're feeling. You've got to develop some strategies. If needed, like I said, talk to a professional to help with coping and strategies that are tailored very specifically for your needs. And then I think most importantly, because I'm not like, oh, forget politics and I'm not saying that, but like vote and participate. I would have more respect for people if they were all stressed out, if they were actually actively participating in their political party, canvassing or whatever it is. It's like, okay, you're taking an active role in the democratic process by voting and participating in civic activities. If you do that, I find that people that are actually involved are way calmer. They're much more rational people because they have a sense of agency and empowerment that helps alleviate this feeling of helplessness. And when I see people engage in political discourse that becomes really destructive, I'm just watching two people that are just helpless. They're just helpless. And you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot. They're trying to control something that they have no control over, and they are not doing anything that's constructive. And so that leads to learned helplessness. So if you really care, I challenge you, my political, and I have lots of friends and clients that are just losing their minds because of politics. And it was like, when Trump was elected, they lost their minds because of Trump, and then when Biden was elected, the Trump guys lost their mind because the world was ending. The world's, according to all of these friends of mine, the world should have been ended years ago, but somehow you notice it just keeps spinning. It keeps spinning. So you know what? If you got out, so here's my challenge to you. If you really give a crap as much as you claim that you do when you battle with people, why don't you put your money where your mouth is and actually go get involved in the Democratic oh, no, you wouldn't do that. No, that would take too much effort. I would have
too much time. I don't have time.
I don't have time. It's like, and I'm say you're full of poop. You're full of poop. If you really care that much, go get involved. I would have way more, give you way more kudos if you actually like put your money where your mouth was and got involved. Are you going to go canvass? You going to go hand out, go volunteer at the your candidate's office? Some will. I mean, some absolutely will, but most won't. And they'll sit, and the ones that actually get involved are quieter because they're not as anxious, because they're doing something about it. So if you're willing to do something about it, if you're so anxious, go get involved. Get involved. That will quiet you down. So remember, it's okay to disengage when needed and to prioritize your mental well-being. That's what this whole podcast is all about. Finding a balance between staying informed and managing stress I think is crucial. It's essential to have a mindset that is healthy in this nightmare of a political climate over the last 10 years that has just really, it's just destroyed. It's destroyed people. It's destroyed people's lives. So that's my advice on it, whatever that's worth.
I feel like that every generation has their, and every time period has their essence. I can't even say it. Their end of the world issue.
You need to focus on the things that you can control, and you need to have awareness. But sitting around stewing and fighting people about something that honestly that you have no involvement in whatsoever, I feel is just a destructive tendency.
I totally agree. And what I would add is this is something you have said, and I will continue to bring it up because I think it's so important, is you can't change the past. It's already happened.
Yep.
The future has yet to happen. Be in the moment. Be present.
Yeah, be aware. Be aware.
Whatever the future holds is what it holds. And the past, so our fears and our anxieties really don't, most of the time, like you say, very rarely affect now. We let them, but they shouldn't, because enjoy what you have at the moment. Enjoy being with your kids. Enjoy doing your hobby, whatever that is. Enjoy the outdoors. Look at the beauty, whatever it may be. That's the moment. That's now.
There's work to be done.
Yep.
So, all right, let's keep going, man. We got another question that I wanted to get to. I don't know if we'll have time, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you talk about it because totally. It was about an issue that a family member was having, and I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. So I got an email. We got an email that was talked about. I'm not going to read the verbatim the email, but I'm going to just sort of paraphrase it. This person has a spouse that they feel is, overly concerned about their child's health, to the point where they were questioning, is this a Munchausen, which is a condition. It's a syndrome. Actually, it's called Munchausen by proxy. Thank you for listening to today's sneak peek premium episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you're interested in hearing the complete version of this episode, you'll want to become a member. We've created the membership program to bring you more in-depth, exclusive content without relying on paid ads. Membership benefits are many beyond the complete episodes of the premium shows each month. They include podcast show notes that provide relevant notes and links to what we discuss during each episode, complete transcripts of each episode of the standard and premium episodes of the LiftAffect podcast, access to our private podcast feed, the ability to ask questions that we will answer on the regular feed of the LiftAffect podcast, regular and ad-free episodes of the regular and premium feeds, and benefits that we will continue to add over time. If you want to learn more, head over to liftaffect.supercast.com. Lastly, if you're already a member and are hearing this, it means that you haven't downloaded our member-only podcast feed, where you can get the full access to the podcast and you don't have to listen to this. You can download that at liftaffect.supercast.com. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you want to dive deeper into this episode and every episode, go to our website, liftaffect.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you'd follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with the ID Matthew McNeil. This show is brought to you by LiftAffect, a clinical mental health and consulting company that assists air carriers, corporate flight departments, pilot unions, and commercial pilots by providing comprehensive psychotherapy and mental skills coaching services to pilots with mental health and mental performance-related issues. Visit liftaffect.com, that's LiftAffect.com, to book your free consultation. And finally, this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of counseling, psychotherapy, medicine, or any other healthcare service, including the giving of medical advice. No therapeutic or provider-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and any materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining advice for any psychological or medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the LiftAffect podcast.